In this lesson, we'll build the left side of our bookcase. All right, so let's take care of the left side here. So we've got the bottom piece taken care of. So now what I want to do is I'm going to go ahead and use my rectangle tool to get this going. So we'll go rectangle, and we're going to go from this corner onto, pardon my mouse movement here, to this area. So what that means for us is, just like when we started off with this two-dimensional surface, go ahead and double click on it. That way everything's highlighted. Type in G on your keyboard here, and that's going to give us the option to group. So then we're going to say left and type it exactly how I have it here. So we're going to go capital L-E-F-T. I'm not really going to add a description or anything, but I am going to say create. So double click on it again, and let's go ahead and apply our first height. So in our case, we'll say 5 feet. That'll be our first height there. And that'll take care of our side here. Oops. So if I click on it, and I'm going to adjust my positioning on the screen so you can see what I'm doing. And I right click and I go to dynamic components, go to attributes. We can then start assigning our attributes. So I can say, I can click here. And so this one, again, we're going to do one for position, but you also want to do one for size. And we're not going to really mess with any behaviors just yet. We'll save that a little bit later down the line. So again, go to position, add all, just like we did last time. Go to add attribute, go to size, add all. So we have what we need in place. So now we can get out of this area, and now we have our two components. So I have component 1 here, component 2 there. Now what we can do is I can already start highlighting these, and I can type in G once again, and what that'll do is that'll allow us to create our main group. So you noticed earlier I talked a little bit about how that title looked. It looked as if the bottom was its own component, which it was. But we know that it's a subcomponent of a greater component. So we'll do that a little bit later on down the line because there's a certain way I want you to do it. But just so you know what's coming up, eventually we'll take all these subcomponents and put them together as one big component. So it's fairly straightforward. So again, if you take a look at the positioning here, just to kind of experiment and get to know our area here, go back to component attributes. And let's take a look at what's going on here. So even with our sizing here, so grab your tool here. So we'll say we know that along the z-axis, the size, which means this way, which is the blue axis, should be 60 inches. So let's test it out. So we'll go from that corner to corner. 5 feet equals 60 inches. So that's exactly what that is. So that height is from that point to this point, and that's 60 inches. Same thing on this green axis. So it should be 12 inches, and the green axis we know runs this way. So if I took my measurement from there to there, it should be 1 foot, and it is. And last but not least, we have a 1/4 or 3/4 of an inch thickness for our material, and there we go. So you kind of get a feel for how that works with our positioning, and also for our size in this case. So I'll leave that as that. I think right now, just currently, we're pretty good on that left side. So what we can do is we can go ahead and jump over to the right side and take care of the same thing. And actually, no, we'll wait for that right side. Let's go ahead and take care of the shelf. So the shelf will actually apply some positioning, some size, but I'm also going to show you how to apply a couple behaviors as well. So for our shelf, I know that I want my shelf to be about 18 inches off the ground here. So I'm going to measure really quickly. And we'll go right here from the bottom. And I'm going to say 18. So that'll be where the top of my shelf should be. So I'm going to grab my rectangle tool. And I'm not going to double click on any one of these because I don't want to build within each component. This is going to be a separate component. So make sure none of these are selected when you're drawing. So we'll kind of go in here. And we'll get my rectangle tool. And I'm going to place my rectangle here in place. So if I know how far I want to go, I'm going to leave it there. I know that my deepest dimension or the largest dimension is going to be the depth. So we know we want 1 foot. But I also want my thickness to be the 3/4 of an inch. So for this particular measurement, do 1 foot, comma 0.75, and it should give you that for us here. So now simply scroll in a little bit further and double click on that two-dimensional element. Hit G on the keyboard again. And this time we're going to call it shelf, capital S-H-E-L-F for shelf. Go ahead and create that element. And now what we're going to do, go ahead and right click. I'm going to show you some behaviors here. Right click on it, bring up that attributes window. And we're going to see what happens when we extrude this element. So let's add those attributes really quick. So we'll say we want positioning. We want our size. But I also want to add some behaviors. So for my behaviors, what I want to add is I want to add a hidden behavior, because we know that as we stretch out this bookcase, some of the shelves are going to have to be hidden until it hits a certain height. And I'll show you how we can actually work that thickness in. But we also want to have a copies parameter or attribute in place, because we want those bookshelves to basically replicate as we increase in height. So let's go on ahead and do that. So the first one I want you to do is going to be hidden. So come to behaviors and put in hidden. Now we're not going to put anything in just yet. We'll get into dealing with formulas a little bit later. So now let's do the other one. So we're going to go back to add attribute, and this one's going to be copies. So for now, we're in good shape. But I do want you to see what happens once we extrude this element. So if I come back over here, double click on it, get in this workplace here, hit your push pull button, and let's go ahead and extrude that face. So check out that size right now along our x-axis is set to 0. So once we extrude it out to this thickness, we can now see a new dimension. Check that out. 60 inches. That's that 5 feet. But I want to take into account the material thickness on this side as well. So we may have to make an adjustment to this side and that side. So let's do that while we're here. So again, we know our material is going to be 3/4 of an inch. So just tuck that in and say 0.75 in that direction. And I'm going to do the same thing here. So double click on it. Grab this face. Push pull it back 3/4 of an inch in that direction. So what that tells me is, just so you understand what we just did, grab your measurement tool here. So this dimension from this corner to here should be just under 5 feet here. So we'll see what it is here. Up, and it's actually 5 feet. So we got to make one more adjustment, another bump here. So go ahead and double click on it, both of these as well. And just push pull that face back another, 3/4 of an inch. So grab that face, 0.75 in that direction. We'll do the same thing for this component. Push pull 0.75 in that direction. And it's really important that we get this in place. A little bit later on down the line, we're going to apply some formulas that are going to help us control this and make sure everything's set and exactly where it needs to be. So now grab your measurement tool. This measurement should be 3/4 of an inch shy of 5 feet. So let's close this window. And we're going to go from this corner to this corner. So it should be 4 feet 11 1/4 exactly. So the other side is actually going to have a thickness, which is right there. So we can go ahead and place that. So in the next lesson, we'll go ahead and take care of that. I think we're at a good stopping point. We'll jump into building in that left side of that shelf, and then we'll also create the top portion as well. So I'll meet you in the next lesson where we'll do the left side, or pardon me, the right side, and also the top of our shelving unit.